Okay, we officially say hello to the voice of the Mississippi State Bulldogs, Neil Price, right hand corner of your screen. How are you?
I'm good. Glad I could contribute in a very small way to the trivia question.
Hey, tell people before we start, you've got kind of a connection to this area of the world. Tell people what it is.
I went to college at Middle Tennessee State University. Finished up school there. Golly, it's been forever ago now. I arrived in Murfreesboro the second day of January 2002. So I started spring semester of '02 as a transfer student from Walter State Community College in Morristown, Tennessee. Um, Went to work almost immediately doing Blue Raider baseball, and then later Lady Raider basketball. Was a sideline reporter for some of those football teams that Andy McCollum was coaching at that time, shortly after they had made the move to what was then Division 1A. And it was a great place to go to school. Murfreesboro is a wonderful town. Middle Tennessee is great. A lot of wonderful people, great communities. Um, I heard Shelbyville, and I wanted to make sure that everybody knew that as best I could tell when I lived there, the Y is silent, right? It's just Shelbyville. It's
Shel-
how I would, yeah, it's just
okay,
Shelbyville, the way I
hold on.
remembered it.
Say that one more time.
Shelbyville.
I like it.
That's pretty
Louisville.
Yeah.
good.
Louisville.
Yeah, well, yeah, there's Louisville until you get here, and about 40 minutes south of us here in Starkville, there's Louisville.
Oh,
And
yeah.
growing up in East Tennessee, there was a Louisville right outside of Knoxville. So, yeah, I loved it there. And it's always fun to get to come back to that area. Chip Walters was great to me. Of course, Chip's been doing the games for a long time. Dick Palmer before that. Dick
Yeah.
was really kind to me when I started out in school there. And it was always great. And I'm glad to know that he's still doing well. I asked Chip about him last time I talked to him. Boots Donnelly was the athletic director at Middle when I was there. And one of the great characters I have ever met in my entire life. I try to explain to people in the way that college athletics is today. It is very corporate today compared to when I started working in college athletics 20 years ago. Boots Donnelly, I wish there were more ADs that were like Coach Donnelly. I do.
Mhm.
He was one of my favorite people. I don't know that he ever knew my name. I started out as boy. I graduated to son by the time that I got out of school. And I remember I had gone to Kentucky. First real job I had was at Kentucky after I got out of school at Middle and was doing baseball and women's basketball on the radio there. And I came back because Middle and Tennessee Tech were going to play football against one another. And they didn't play when I was in school because Middle had moved to the Sun Belt. And I wanted to see it because they were going to play for, and I forget which side was which. You had one side that called it Harvey and the other side that called it the Shinny Ninny, which was a totem pole. And I think it's still maybe in the Hall of Fame building at Middle. But I wanted to see it. So I came back, and Coach Donnelly was not the AD anymore at this point. He was doing a radio show with Bob Bell at that time. There's a name for everybody
Yeah.
too. Nashville
Yeah.
radio legend. I don't have enough cigarettes to get that resonant quality that Bob Bell had in his voice. But
Bob Bell.
yeah, but Coach Donnelly was outside doing a radio show with Bob Bell, and he saw me walk up, and the first thing he says is, "Good grief, boy. Had they done throwed you out of Kentucky already?" And I just he was just the best. But
Telling
there are
he
a lot
knows
of
him
lot of
well.
good people there. Still are.
Yeah.
Still are.
Yeah, I just ate lunch with those guys about 2 weeks ago. Coach Donnelly and Coach Five Ash and Coach Boonio and Coach Robbins.
Coach Five Ash was always when the plane would land when we go on a football trip. Coach Five Ash was a great operations guy, by the way. I mean,
Oh,
that
yeah.
thing ran with military precision when we go on football trips. And they'd land that plane, and the flight attendants would start, cross-checking and all this. And as soon as the plane hit the ground, you'd hear Coach Five Ash, cross-check, cross-check. He didn't know what it meant. He just said it. But I used to love going on those trips. Andy McCollum, I'm really glad that Andy McCollum's at Swanee. I was tickled to read that when he went back. I thought the world of Andy. He was good to me, and I didn't know anything about football and still don't claim to, but he was really patient with me when I started there. Great guy to be around. I did his radio show for a couple of years, and we always had a good time. I got a lot of great memories of about 3 years that I spent there at Middle. And again, still a lot of really good people around there. But yeah, that's my connection. That's it.
Quite a connection.
That's it.
So let's start with memories. It amazed me the flood of stories about Mike Leach. My one dealing with him in taping an interview is one of the weirdest interviews I've ever been a part of. And I really didn't know him the way you probably did. Give me a Leach story.
Okay. And I'll preface it by saying I don't know that. I think it's a very tight circle of people who really knew Coach Leach. One of my great regrets, I think, that I'll carry with me to the end of my career is that I was a little too stubborn in the first year or two that he was here, that when we would do that Thursday night radio show, I wouldn't just turn him loose. I had it in my mind, we got to talk about football because there are fans who are listening to this that they want to hear this offensive genius explain football. And my experience was he hated to talk about football. He talked about it for a living. He did it every day when he was in the office. But the truth is, Coach's day started about 3:30 or 4 o'clock in the afternoon and ended about 5 o'clock the next morning. But that was just what he did. And when he was outside of the office, when he was off the field, he would rather talk about anything but. So you asked for one, I'll give you the two that immediately come to mind. We didn't have a spring game in 20 after he got hired because of COVID. So the first spring game that he coached in here was in 21. And I'd go out, a couple of days before that Saturday game and get the interview for those spring games. So we're standing on a turf practice field. And I said, hey, Coach, when we get done, I don't want to keep you very long. I said, but we're going to Yellowstone for a couple weeks here after the spring game. I know you're from Cody, Wyoming. I'm going to have a car. You know a lot about that part of the world. Can I just pick your brain about it for a second when we get done? Yeah. How long you got? I'm not in a hurry. So we do a 5-minute interview for the football broadcast, and 90 minutes later, we're still standing on the 50-yard line of that turf practice field, and he has told me about every nook and cranny that I need to see while I'm in that part of the world. But it all starts with, okay, so when you get out there, you're going to want to stay away from the bear, okay? Because, see, the bear's been asleep for 5 or 6 months, and it's going to come stumbling out of some cave out there. And, you're kind of big, and you might taste good. So stay away from the bear, okay? And then it turns into, hey, Coach, what am I going to eat? Well, you're going to eat a lot of red meat. You're really going to like it. You're going to eat potatoes. They're not much on green vegetables out there. He goes, and that's okay. Your cholesterol will be a little high when you come back, but I imagine you'll be pretty happy. And then it was he was trying to tell me about the Buffalo Bill Cody Museum of the American West, which is in Cody, Wyoming. And he's like, I'm trying to think of what to compare this to. You ever been to the Vatican? No, sir. I'm a Southern Baptist from Russellville, Tennessee. I don't think those folks would understand me any more than I probably understand them. There'd be a little bit of a barrier if I did that. But that was him, and he could say something like that because he was a guy who had so many different life experiences that it was just unreal. The other one I'll tell you is the last coaches show we did together. Going into the Ole Miss game last year, we're in a break, and our breaks they're 4 minutes long. I mean, they're an eternity. So he's sitting over here, and he's got his phone in his hand, and he just starts scrolling through the phone. And I said, he'd been taking a Spanish lesson. He wanted everyone who would ask him to know he'd taken this Spanish lesson on his phone 300 or 400 consecutive days because he had planned on going back to Spain at some point with his wife. And he also wanted you to know that app was free. He didn't pay for that app. That app was free. You can get this for free, you know. So he's thumbing through, and what are you doing? You taking your Spanish lesson? No, I'm looking at castles. What do you mean you're looking at castles? Well, he said, they got these things just sitting empty over here in Europe. And I guess like these governments, they give you a tax break or something on because they just don't want them sitting around. He said, you get a pretty good deal on them. So he turns his phone to me, like it's like the Zillow of medieval castles.
Oh my God.
And he said, see, this one's only $475 American. And he's rolling down there. Now, I'm not telling you that you're going to get like a great kitchen and bathrooms, but you're probably going to get a cool fireplace or 10. You're going to have some woods. And if you're really lucky, maybe you can buy one that's got a drawbridge and a moat. I mean, you could sleep in a different room every night for like a month. How great would that be? Now, you're not going to the grocery store down the street. You're going to have to fish and hunt a little bit, but this would be pretty cool. And he finds one, and I forget exactly what it looks like, but he holds it over and he looks at me and he grins. He goes, now, see, this one's perfect for you. Only 600,000 American, and just like you, stately and regal.
Hey, Kelly, are you listening to this?
Absolutely. That is awesome.
I will never work with another one like him. I will consider myself until my career ends incredibly fortunate that I got to brush shoulders with that degree of greatness. He was truly unique. And to tell you the impression he made, they asked me here, and they could have asked anyone else and probably should have asked someone else. I had to lead his memorial service in the Coliseum.
Oh, God.
And so it is a who's who of football, not just college football, but of football. And at the end of the ceremony, they asked me to go down and shake hands with everybody as they're leaving the Coliseum. Of course, the Stoops brothers are all there. I mean, we all know those guys well. And Bob Stoops was kind enough to get up to speak about the time they spent together at Oklahoma. But as I'm shaking hands with people, 3 in a row coming out the door now. This tells you exactly the influence Mike Leach had. 3 in a row, Jackie Sherrill, who was the coach here at Mississippi State, obviously, and Texas A&M and, a lot of other places. R.C. Slocum, who followed him at A&M, and Barry Switzer, legendary coach at Oklahoma and the coach of the Dallas Cowboys at one time. And I'm shaking hands with those guys as they're leaving, and they don't know me, and I certainly don't know them other than to know who they are. But I'm like, this is pretty cool. Oh, and by the way, there's a guy sitting in the very back who didn't make any kind of fuss about being there, who had about a $500 haircut, and he sat quietly on the back row and he didn't say a word. And when he walked out, I looked at it, it was Cliff Kingsbury, coach of the Cardinals, and just came because Mike Leach was his guy. Surreal. I mean, the stories were unbelievable. I'm not trying to hijack the show, I promise. One more.
No, this is incredible.
That's awesome.
So one day at practice, Coach Leach would famously always wear cargo shorts, usually wore flip-flops during football practice. So he's on the field and he's working with the offensive team, and he reaches in the side pocket of the cargo shorts, kept his cell phone in one, kept an apple in the other, because an apple was a good teeth cleaner. If you've had a dip in and you bite an apple, it cleans your teeth pretty good if you got to be in front of the camera. Keep that in mind. So anyway, his phone's buzzing. So he picks the phone up and he looks at it and he takes a call in the middle of practice. So he just walks down. There's a tree-lined There are a bunch of trees at one end of the practice facility that are the barrier between the facility and Highway 12. So he's walking down there and he's on the phone, and 10 minutes go by, 15 minutes go by, no coach. Will Rogers has got him out there running whatever the next play is. I mean, he's just taking them through it. Drew Hollingshead, who was here at the time, was one of coach's assistants. He's out there. They just kind of aren't missing a beat. So almost a half hour probably goes by. Coach Leach comes back. So after practice ends, John Cohen, who was the AD here at the time, John walks down and says, "Hey, Mike, is everything okay?" "Yeah, why? What's wrong? Why would anything be wrong?" He goes, "Well, I just noticed you took a call and you were gone for a long time. Just want to make sure, family's okay." Everybody's like, "Oh, yeah, we're good." Well, who in the world could you have been talking to that you just walk away for almost a half hour of practice? And he gets the phone out and he pulls up the call list and turns and shows John, and it says Donald Trump. And he says, "John, here's the thing. When the president of the United States calls, you answer." And I'm like, this is not real life. It's not. This is not real life. But he was,
God.
Yeah, I will never. I mean, I'm fortunate that I get to brush shoulders with people who know far more about this game than I ever will. But I'll never work with another one like that. Never. And I'll remember little moments like that from now for as long as I do it, and look back fondly on it. I wish I would have known him better, but like I say, I think the circle's really small. But he was one of a kind, without question.
Kelly, you got time for 2 football questions. Go.
Oh my goodness! After all that, that's like having to go. That's like going behind George Strait, dude, and singing a song. I mean, good gracious. Okay, how different is this team going to look with? I know that you still got Will Rogers, and he's thrown for all these yards. He was with the system for a long time, but how much different is this going to look with Zach Arnett, who's the defensive coordinator? Because I know defensive coordinators, I've been around them, and they don't like when you get in that air raid offense and you throw 3 straight incompletions and you take 13 seconds off the clock. So I know it's going to be somewhat different. So how different will it be?
Well, with Kevin Barbay, the guy that Coach Arnett's brought in to run the offense, they're going to run it more, Kelly.
Yeah.
Now, I don't know what the breakdown is going to be, but there are more designed runs. And they've thrown some looks out there. The thing that everyone's told me about Kevin Barbay is that he's a guy who is exceptional at getting the ball in the hands of his playmakers. So there are a couple guys that play receiver on this team that were high school quarterbacks, and they've thrown some looks out there where they put the ball in their hands and they've given them the option to either try to run around the end or put it in the air. And we might not have done that in the last 3 years. A tight end is going to change things a little bit. Now, I don't know how experienced that group's going to be because tight end hadn't been in position in this offense in 3 years. But Rylan Goody came over from Georgia. He clearly has played with 2 really good tight ends in his time over there. So I have to think he learned something from being around those guys. We've got some converted wide receivers. A guy named Antonio Harmon's had a really good camp, who's from just down the road in Kosciuszko, Mississippi. I think that will help give them a little different dynamic offensively. And they've got 5 running backs that, just watching camp, I wouldn't hesitate to give the ball to any one of them. And I think they all have a different skill set. They've got speed guys. They've got guys who are kind of bowling ball guys that, third down back. And 1 or 2 that have a little bit of a mix when it comes to those 2 things. So, and some experienced guys at receiver. So I think that more people will get the ball in their hands, but the biggest thing with the naked eye, the common fan's going to see is State's probably going to run the ball more than it has in the last 3 years.
So how is my last thing here? How is Coach Arnett? I can't imagine that situation that he had to step into right there with. You just talked about Mike Leach for 20 minutes. How just everybody loved Coach Leach, man. And I've known guys that played for him that loved him. But how has he stepped into that role so far with such a tragedy that happened?
As well as anyone could ask. And he is a guy who is straight ahead. Just here's what's next. Here's what we've got to do. He's very organized. He has a great plan. And he's confident. That's the thing I take away from him. I mean, 36 years old, and he's a head coach in the SEC. And to your point, it kind of just got thrust onto him because no one expected what happened in December. But I think he's handled it very well. And to talk to a lot of people around here, including some who were a part of that decision to elevate him into that role, one of the biggest reasons is that he is very much like the identity of this place. Here's a guy who shows up to the office in blue jeans and cowboy boots, and kind of who we are here. So he's very old school. Joe Lee Dunn guy. Rocky Long's the guy he played for in college off that Joe Lee Dunn tree. He calls defense like Coach Dunn. He's not scared to bring people and pressure from all different angles. It's fun to watch, fearless in that way. And I think he has inserted himself a little bit into the offense in that he's going to have some say if he doesn't agree with something. But he's let Kevin Barbay have a lot of freedom to come in and install and put in what he wants to do offensively. And I think he'll give him a lot of freedom to call plays and make that stuff happen when the games get here in a week. So he's perfect. He's perfect for the place.
Neil, you got to promise me I'm going to text you or call you back in about 2 or 3 weeks. And I just want to hear more Mike Leach stories.
That was awesome.
God.
That was awesome.
If only if we can trade. If we can trade and Kelly can share some Coach Donnelly stories. Yeah.
Hey, let me tell you the Joe. I'll tell you the Joe Lau story. You remember who Joe Lau was? Do you know Joe Lau?
I heard the name. Heard the name.
Okay, so Joe Lau was a kicker. Okay, so Coach Donnelly, and I've already told George and Billy this, and I'm sure the listeners have heard it as well. But one day something happened, and Coach Donnelly yelled at Joe Lau and said, "There is no way, son, that you can come from your mama and daddy's loins." And then Joe Lau said, "Coach, I was adopted." He goes, So that's Coach Donnelly, man.
We ain't all fishing from the same pier. We ain't all fishing in the same pond here. He was just – Chip tells a story about going to Hawaii with them one year, and he gets off the plane, and Coach Donnelly gives a press conference as soon as they get off the plane in Honolulu. And he's throwing all the bootsisms out there, including we got to step up to the licking block. Chip says there's a reporter who walks up to him, a little Polynesian reporter walks up, and he says, "Excuse me, but what is a licking block?"
I was on that trip now.
Oh, okay. I didn't realize that.
Yeah, We got up on Hawaii 14-0, and Coach Donnelly thought that we had won the game, and he kind of slowed back, and then they stormed back because they ran that triple option with the Michael Carter kid, and they scored 35 straight on us and beat us 35-14.
I don't think this is a legend, and I know you got to take a break. I promise you. I don't think this is a legend. I think this really happened, but Middle played Florida State, I think, on TBS one year. You were there too? Yeah.
Oh, yeah. I was a freshman.
Florida State is just burying them. And at halftime, they get Coach Donnelly coming off the field and ask him about his concerns. He goes, "Well, my biggest concern is somebody's going to call PETA because if they ain't careful," he said, "they're going to kill that horse," because they kept running the horse back and forth across the end zone. That's another guy. One of a kind, man. One of a kind.
Right.
Yeah. We're doing this again in the next few weeks. This is hilarious. Neil,
I'm glad I could fill the air with something for you just to be a little bit helpful today. Everyone, if I haven't run everyone off, but I'm glad I can help in some way.
You have not. Hail State. We'll talk soon.
Thanks, guys. Good to talk to you. Good to see you.
Oh, my God. What a guest. Neil Price was terrific.